The stories of the wild horses were really from my dad and my grandfather. My grandfather actually started gathering horses and helping people gather those horses when he was 14, so that would have been in the 20s and 30s. And then when my dad was 7, 8 years old, he was helping his dad, and they were gathering those horses in the 40s. And you know, my granddad told me a story when he was about 14. He was working for some guys up around Chow somewhere, and they gathered like 400 head and drove them to Springfield and put on the train. And then they sold every horse and just got on the train with their saddles and come back to Mackay. I think they're a heck of a herd. I mean, I've seen wild horses from other places, so I think ours have them beat. In other places, ranchers are really suffering with wild horses in the management, and it's a problem with the resource. I hope that never happens here.
Well, my great-grandfather came in 1865 and homesteaded. The Joyce brothers were the second generation. They were the ones that oversaw the transformation from horses to vehicles. And that was the basis for the Owyhee herds today. Horses that the settlers couldn't use anymore. And all of a sudden, when World War II broke out, you know, horses were worth something again. The remount situation had come about, and my dad bought out a number of brands of different ranches around who didn't want to deal with horses anymore and didn't have very many. It got lucrative enough gathering horses. You know, my dad just basically paid the debt off with horses. We were the only ones left that had a horse right, and so we gathered them off the range, and we got them all except I think there was 2 stallions. But I think what really influenced the genetics, and I have to hand it to BLM, they turned out the best when they'd gather. The ones that went back out there were the good ones.
If we talk about recreation on rangelands, they like to go see the horses and see them out there. I like to see them out there. With livestock, you can manage them, you can do a rest rotation, but the horses are not rotated and it's not rested. But we've got to think about the health of the rangelands, not just cattle grazing, the health of the rangeland, which is important to all of us.
In '71, our first aerial census or population count was conducted, and we counted 150 horses in one burro. And so I don't know where the burro came from, but there was a burro out there. We did a couple of small gathers to, you know, 1, prove that we could humanely gather horses, and 2, to get some vital measurements or indicators of the herd. The reason that we weighed the animals is we wanted to be as specific as we could, so we knew what the average animal weight was, and then we would know how much forage was really required for those animals. You know, we had to know, first of all, how much forage we had out here, then how much forage the horses were going to require, and then balance that with all the other uses of the land, you know, the wildlife and livestock grazing and everything else.
So one unique feature to the Sailor Creek Horse Management Area is that there is no free-flowing or perennial waters. There are pipelines and troughs, and all of that water system is fed by a series of wells, both on private and public lands. I believe there's over 93 miles of underground pipeline that feeds 67 troughs. We have incredible partnerships between the BLM and the permittees that run cattle and sheep out here. When they are out here grazing, they take care of the water sources, and then when they're gone, we in turn take care of those sources. So that water runs out here year-round. We manage out here for not only the horse herds, but for wildlife as well as grazing and recreation. So that all comes into play, and we have to work together in order to make this area sustainable and available for years to come.
We had a really great oral history. You know, the families that released horses here back in the late 1800s still had families, still had ranches here in the area. You know, they turned loose a Shire stud that they imported from England and put out here. And so they were looking for a sturdy mix that could do, you know, the farm work, but they could also ride too.
Local history tells us that the horses that were the cornerstone of the Sailor Creek Horse Management Area arrived here in the 60s, and they had horse runners from the Gooding area bring mares down that they gathered in Chalice and then left out here with registered studs. So then the horse runners then would annually come back and collect the colt crop for their own uses, and that's how the horses ended up here in the first place.
So we do give them a couple weeks to get acclimated to this environment, acclimated to the people being around them, because obviously they haven't had people around. They receive one full round of vaccinations, and they receive one full round of wormer. The teeth will be looked at, determine the age of the horse, and they will receive a freeze brand on the neck, which identifies the horse. The care they receive once they hit this facility, you know, it's some of the best care that we can provide. We have some of the best medical providers, veterinarians on staff. We work with the Idaho Equine Hospital here locally in Nampa, Idaho. We feed them the best horse hay we can purchase. Everything that comes here for these horses to receive has been approved and certified through USDA. You know, caretaking of these horses is the number one priority. So once they hit this facility, our ultimate goal is to get them to a good home, to get them to a member of the public that you know, wants to have a wild horse at home and has always wanted a wild horse at home. We're an adoption facility. They come here to be adopted.